Om is a very powerful sound that all the yogis and even mystics have been working with. In our tradition, it turned into Amen and Amen, but the original sound of creation, the emanation from source, it is the AUM. And so when we chant Om, we actually do something miraculous. It's like doing incredibly powerful magic in this world. And for those of you who can see it, you will see the entire quantum field of this world will actually reorganize itself. So it is the easiest way to repair the quantum field that usually is a little distorted through human behavior and thoughts. Okay, so let's go deep within. This will be a full transmission. So I don't have slides, which normally I do, so that I am not in my head and so that I could just tap into the thread that comes from Divine Mother. I do not channel, I communicate, but also the channels of energy run through us, so we tap into them. We also have Prashant from Australia here on the call, who agreed to hold this amazing energy of Divine Mother for us. And I highly recommend reaching out to Prashant through Facebook and having a session of this experience of the opening of a portal through which Divine Mother and all the high beings of creation come. I created this visual transmission, which is coded. I always use coded imagery. As we listen, we have something to entertain our eyes. Each and every visual that I use, as you know from my videos, it's actually always chosen by Divine Mother. So my name is Adi, and I know I came into this world just like many of you and all of you on this call to assist Mother Earth in her transition. Mother Earth is a being just like we have creator beings. We call her Earth, and that's really a strange name to give her. So we used to call her Gaia. We used to call her maybe Terra. But her original name was Mu. Mu is the name for mother in the original languages that were used. And you know, languages, they are originally like when people speak light language. So Mu is a vibration, a frequency. So the ancient languages, they were not about creating words. They were really frequencies and vibrations. And so like Om has an incredibly powerful frequency that can actually clear the quantum field. So chanting Mu is really a way to connect with the original vibration of the mother. And that's why the original name for the earth was Mu. So the first continent, if you will, would be Mu, the land of the mother. After that, we had Lemuria, so still kind of remembering the mother. And then, of course, it went on to Atlantis, and now we have our world. So when Atlantis went underwater, which was the last transition between worlds, that is when some of us were here present on planet Earth, and we knew we can never ever allow that to happen again. This pain caused to Mu. And so that's why we embodied in this lifetime, you and me, to be here. And some of you remember exactly the assignment that you have. And some of you might just have, you know, intuition about it. But everybody will awaken to the fullness of their mission in the next couple of years because we are so needed. And so for me, I have very strong memories of many different lifetimes and why we are here. And so I would always say we are here to support this, what people call ascension, but really it's an expansion of reality, but also it's one thing that is really important. Mu, as the original mother, she lost her rainbow body. Her rainbow body was a protection that she had. You know, like we think of ourselves as physical and non-physical. So for most of you, I'm sure that you know that you've had experiences with yourself as a non-physical being, as well as a physical being. All of creation is created to be physical and non-physical. Both are actually equal. So being in the form, you can be in the form of a physical body, and that seems to be very dense, or you can be in the form of a light body, but that's also a form. So everything that has a form is the manifested creation. Everything that is manifested creation, which also includes that which we would call non-physical. So let's say an angel to you might be a non-physical being. A galactic being to you might be a non-physical being, depending on the frequency of vibration. But actually everything that has a form is manifested. Then we have what some would call the void, the unmanifested creation. This is really important to actually understand that creation is always manifested and unmanifested. And so the best way to create kind of like a symbol for what creation is, it would be to look at the yin and yang. I find that there is nothing that beats the symbol. And that shows you the manifested and unmanifested creation. It shows you the dual nature of all realities, and it really represents source and creation itself. To understand Divine Mother, to understand life, we must go back to the Big Bang. So the Big Bang is what we could call the origin of creation. It is also what we could call now source. So when we travel to the ultimate source of all things, we come to the Big Bang as, you know, the moment when from nothingness, everythingness becomes possible. It is really unfathomable to imagine what the origin of all things was. When you have the ultimate potentiality for all, but it is all contained in the non-existence of things. And suddenly this arising, we could call it a desire to get to know thyself, comes from within the source. And that is the moment of the Big Bang. Now, when the Big Bang, let's say the moment of Big Bang happened, it created a field around itself, right? It was this big explosion. And the field is what we would call Divine Mother. It is the divine feminine force. So in creation, it is Divine Mother, the divine feminine, that creates. Source still exists. Source is still the Big Bang that is happening in every moment. We are in the field of creation. Now, Divine Mother as the creator, the divine feminine force, as you know, like we women, we give birth to children, and so it is in creation. That's why it is the divine feminine that creates the world. You have the source, and then you have the field around it. The field around it is not only creation, but it is also what we can call life with a capital L. My journey in this lifetime has been really dedicated, not because I chose to, but because that was chosen for me, really. But, you know, deep down, we all choose to work with Divine Mother and to go deeper and deeper into understanding all of creation, all the way to the source field and how it spills out into all dimensions and all the different worlds and all the different universes. So what I'm telling you is just things that I have seen and that were shown to me through work with my guides, especially Yogananda and the great Divine Mother herself. So Divine Mother has basically the same desire, the same intent as Source itself. And that is to create as many possible realities, really infinity of them, and to keep perpetuating creation into infinity so that it never ends. From the moment of creation, we can call all that has been the outbreath of Source, the outbreath of Creator. The goal is for this game to never have a solution, in a way, to constantly keep creating, to come up with so many different option possibilities, worlds, beings, combinations, that there is infinity that keeps expanding, right, forever. So that's a little unsettling because that means, imagine if you create, let's say, I don't know, billions of worlds, and you create zillions of beings, and you keep going. Then what happens is that, absolutely, but by the nature of creation, some of the worlds will get a little messy, which is what happened here on planet Earth. And then it is also possible, and that's also what happened on planet Earth, that some of the worlds will actually forget their place in creation. And suddenly they will think, like we did, that there is nothing outside of us, or that we need to have some kind of religious gods. And so we start worshiping the wrong entity. And I say wrong, even though there is never nothing wrong within the field of creation, because the infinity of possibilities also includes what we would call the wrong. So even that is part of creation, part of self-knowing, and part of self-realization for Source. When you travel through the field of Source and creation, you will find that there are some beings who have cut off completely from life force. Now, life force is something that when you cut off from life force, that being becomes completely dark. And so we would call those beings, let's say, demons. There are very few of those in the entire field of creation. So, when you compare things like on the big scale, there is a very small part of creation that actually managed to completely cut off from life force. Now, that doesn't worry Source at all. It doesn't bother anyone in this big picture. It bothers some worlds. It bothers us, definitely. But from the big perspective, nothing really matters. And yet it does. You will find that the world of creation is full of paradoxes and dichotomies. And those are not resolvable. They just have to be accepted. And so you will find something very interesting about creation. And this is all Divine Mother. As you know, Divine Mother has dual nature. In, let's say, the yogic traditions, they see her as the beautiful light, which she is, the Adi Shakti. And she is this infinite light of creation that is just shining through all that is. She's only love. But there is a process of creation that uses duality. And actually that is the process of Source creation. So there is nothing wrong with duality when it is used correctly. And that's how Divine Mother, of course, uses it. But you also know that there is a side to Divine Mother which is called Kali. And then Kali is always represented as this dark, demonic goddess. And again, that is part of Divine Mother. So there are all these beautiful dichotomies that use her to tell the stories she wants to tell. And if all stories were the same, if everybody had the most perfect experience, everybody would have the identical experience, every world would be the same, then there would be no evolution. And so Divine Mother also creates opportunities for us to face challenges. And that is not for us to suffer. That was never intended. But we need to show that we have within us the power and the will and the love. And that when tests come, and she does test, she tests us not through suffering. Suffering, again, is not part of the original design of life. We created suffering. And I will show you and tell you how. So Divine Mother creates tests of strength, tests of knowing, so it's nice. It's like when you go to school, they test you, right? It's not that they hate you or want you to suffer. It's because they want to know your skills. And so that's how creation is also designed. It is designed for us to show our skills. And we can only show it when we face something that is not the pure light and love, and yet behind it all is the pure light and love. And so that's the dual nature of Divine Mother. It is the light and also the dark. And in mystic traditions, they call her the Black Madonna. And also in Native American cultures, they had the trickster. And so the trickster is actually also Divine Mother. Everything is Divine Mother. There is nothing that is not her, because she is all of creation. And so one has to really learn how to live with it within creation. It's the art of living, and it's the art of knowing Mother Life. When she speaks to me, and we have been speaking really for many years, she does not want to be called names like, Adi Shakti and Kali. She says, if people really want to understand me, then my name is life. That's all. And I find that, we always can relate to life. Every single one of us can accept that life seems to be something grander and greater than our own self. Once we start putting faces onto Divine Mother, and we kind of put her in a body, we actually can only work with a very small aspect of her. So let's say I work with the Green Tara, and it's really because she was the one to initiate me into this work. Then if we just start worshiping Green Tara, we are actually not at all able to hold the entire fullness, vastness of Divine Mother in our consciousness. And so working with her in the formless form is what I think really honors her the best. And that form is all life. Now, she is the life that is manifested. She is the life that is also not manifested. And so she is really all that is. All that is that emanated from Source. So there's the dual nature of creation. Now, Divine Mother is in every single one of you. She is also in every single person who might not be of the highest consciousness. She is in every molecule of life. She is in all of nature. So nature exists in all 12 dimensions of reality. Nature is actually kind of like a clue for beings. So let's say you are in a world that lost its knowing, which happens. And like I said, it happened to us. But nature is still here. As long as nature is around us, nature has the answer. So if you would think of Divine Mother as the non-physical being, and then the physical being, then her physical nature is what we would call nature. The plants, the trees, especially, trees are wonderful guides. And so if you live in a world when knowledge has been lost, you can find her again in nature. And I think that's why so many of us really feel this special calling to protect nature, to care for nature. But also she's in our own bodies. She's also in animals. Every creature that has ever been created is a creation of Divine Mother. And that's why I think the Buddhist philosophy that tells us to protect all of nature, to protect all the creatures, to cause no harm, to really be detailed about, let's say like in Buddhism, even an ant is not a creature we kill. And that's because she is in all that is. So let's say the native people would not even lift a rock without asking the rock. And I know that we might think that's extreme, and yet that is the way. The way that is so beautifully described in the Tao Te Ching is the way of the mother. It is the way of extreme love with nothing else but love, but also to see Divine Mother in all things, and also to accept Divine Mother in all things. That means also accepting Divine Mother in our enemies and seeing beyond all of it, because it's just a story that's being told. Now, I will take you a little bit into our history and how we ended up here, because that is really what's important right now. So our history is very long. It's millions of years long. On planet Earth, we had a planet, like many planets, seemed to be lifeless. To have biological life, it is very different on every planet. So you might look at some planet like Mars and you say, oh, there is no life on Mars. But it's only because we are looking through our human eyes, we're looking through human technology. So it is not so. Life does not have to be the way that we know it here, that it would need, that would be carbon based and need the same conditions. Life does not need the same conditions. That's why it's not limited to just planet Earth. There is life on other planets. There is life everywhere in the universe, and there is life all across all universes. Different conditions are really important, because how would you know what possibilities you have, what options you have, if you didn't try different conditions? And so Divine Mother, I often call her the architect, the scientist, the chemist, the physicist, the biologist. She's all of that. She's the force behind all of those things. And that's why to put her into like a personalized body and say, she has a human face, no. She is the vastness that is almost unimaginable for human consciousness. So within her body are all these worlds, and all these worlds are expanding ideally. We want all worlds to expand. The force of creation is always the force of expansion. Life, even though sometimes you might think that life doesn't always expand, it actually always does. So like when you see nature, just by observing nature, you will see that nature, it is her nature to expand, to create new variations, to thrive, to renew, to restore, and to have different cycles. And so that's the ideal nature of Divine Mother. It is to go through cycles, it is to expand. It is also to recycle that which needs to be recycled. And so again, in nature, we can find all the answers. So with planet Earth, millions of years ago, when we started to bring energies that could create life, then we created what we would call the elemental kingdom. And so the elemental kingdom, you might call it the non-physical part of life, would come out of the body of Divine Mother as rainbow light, because the emanation of source energy is rainbow. And it is not the rainbow that we know in the sky. It is the full spectrum of the 12-dimensional light that creates. All of creation is created through light, frequency, and patterns. The patterns that are really the sacred geometry of life, like let's say the flower of life being the DNA of life. So the same patterns are being observed in all of nature. So the first continent, Mu, planet Earth, was created. It was a beautiful world of the rainbow light. We had beautiful rainbow protection. And protection is not the right word at that point. Emanation of this world created this magnetic field around the Earth, which seemed to be like the rainbow body of the Green Tower. And because it was magnetic in nature, it would also provide protection to this world from other influences, as you know, because there are so many worlds. And so this world had its own evolution until much, much later, when certain beings on this planet, it always takes the beings on the planet, started to misuse life force. Now, life force is the most important element that humanity will be learning about now. As you know, we really did not master life force. Life force is the greatest gift of life. It is a gift you receive as every single one of us, from Divine Mother, from Source. And we are supposed to use it to create something much more beautiful, to create love, to create peace, to create harmony, and to constantly come up with new, variations, creativity. So really, we all were meant to be artists. And I don't mean like artists in the true sense of the word, but really life artists. So when you see beautiful patterns of light and you would think, as an artist, I will take a little bit of life force and I will add to it, I will expand it. And so here's an example for you. Let's say the beings at that point on this planet would receive 100 units of life force a day. And in the world that would be ideal, which we used to be, a being would receive these 100 units into their heart. The heart is this energetic portal, and they would enrich it with their own essence, because every single one of us has a unique tone. Now, from that essence, you would transmit these 100 units of life force into the field of creation. You would expand it into more beauty, more perfection, more creativity. And it would be for the highest good of all. So that would be the ideal world. You receive 100 units, you transmit 100 units. You keep nothing to yourself, you receive the fullness, transmit the fullness. But because beings in this world, for many different reasons, were unable to do that anymore, and instead they would actually misuse most of it. And it's very easy to misuse life force. It doesn't even have to be an ill intent. It can just be unconscious behavior, unconscious thinking, unconscious feeling. So let's say throughout the day, we have 70,000 thoughts, and actually most of them are unconscious. They do not add to the field of creation in the most positive ways. And so when this world got into that place, which happened really even before Atlantis, then it was decided that it would be actually not beneficial to keep giving 100 points of life force to the beings of planet Earth. Because if you receive 100 points and you create, so much negativity, so much suffering, then it's creating immense amounts of suffering for everyone in this world. So it was decided that it would be really better if humans receive just 1 unit of life force. Because with 1 unit, it keeps you alive. You still exist as a being, and you have the opportunity to show your mastery with 1 unit. And if you don't show mastery and you still misuse life force, it's not going to make such a mess like 100 units of misused life force would do. So that's basically what happened. Now, it actually created a big problem, but like I said, in the field of creation, nothing is a problem. But of course, nature actually moves towards harmony and balance and equilibrium. And that is, again, what nature does. And so equilibrium is something that all life is all constantly moving towards. So even when you have chaos, eventually you have balance. So when we have chaos on planet Earth, and we've had chaos for quite a bit, then we are naturally moving towards equilibrium. The way that we move there, which is what you and me are doing here on this planet, and so many of us here, is that we are learning how to be responsible with that 1 unit of life force, 24 hours. Now, there are so many different layers of creation, and we are being seen, and of course we are being assisted. The way that it works is that, let's say you have a group of 10 guides, and these guides are, let's say, master beings and angelic beings. And they look at you every day. You get that 1 unit of life force, and you start doing great things with it. You start helping people to realize that it's important that we return to consciousness and oneness and understanding. You realize that nature is really important. You realize that we can no longer tolerate the suffering of any species on this planet. You change your diet, you change your habits, you change the way that you view other people's unconsciousness, and you assist them. Suddenly your guides go, okay, that is a being who uses life force every day responsibly. And really it is responsibility. And so they go like, okay, let's start with 2 units, 3 units, 4 units. And the more you show up with your consciousness, which what it really is, and your understanding and your knowing in your thoughts, feelings, actions, words, the whole package, then the more life force you get and the more of a role you get to play in this world. It also changes your light body, which is kind of like how beings read you. So now you have life force coming through, you have better light body, you're doing great work. And instead of having angelic guides and instead of having master beings guiding you, you are kind of promoted to the next level of responsibility. So now you will be working, let's say, with source beings. So you keep moving non-physically because of the work that you do in this world. Now, the way that Divine Mother explains this, of course, you want to be part of this constant expansion. And this is again the dichotomy within creation. We don't want creation to end because look how beautiful it is when you create beautiful worlds and ideally harmonious worlds, but worlds where evolution keeps happening, worlds where beings keep growing, learning, transforming. And it has a dual goal. One goal is for evolution to keep going, to keep finding new ways to expand herself. So we want to be part of it consciously to add to this expansion. Now, the other part of creation seems to be exactly the opposite. To not be part of the creation, to completely just know it is all actually one big hologram. It is one big dream. It is zillions of stories. None of them are real. And so the ideal state of being is really the state of being that is in between those two dual kind of realities. Again, the yin and yang. So when you realize that you are part of a game, but you also know that the game is a game and you still play it, but you play it from this new way of being, which is completely free. So like we've had in all the traditions telling us about non-attachment, well, this is really the ultimate non-attachment. It is a state of being in which you face all that is with the ultimate knowledge. And the ultimate knowledge is the knowledge of Divine Mother. It is only when we understand how she creates, why she creates, how important creation is, how we help her to create when we use 100 points of life force every day correctly, and correctly meaning for the well-being of all, for the love of all, but with 100% non-attachment. Only then do we step into our true power. So it's almost like when you say, like becoming completely empty so that she can move through you, so that she can do her work through you, and you do not stand in her way, and yet you are her paintbrush, because she needs many paintbrushes with different, texture, structure, quality. So now you think of yourself as a paintbrush that the artist that Divine Mother is being used by her. So instead of you struggling and trying to grab the paintbrush, trying to do your thing because of your own will, you actually surrender completely to her will. Now, this is a very mystical experience that in our world is often called the Kundalini Awakening. I think it is extremely misunderstood. And those who have experienced it, like we had Sean here, a friend of mine who was speaking about his mystical experience with this Kundalini journey. And for, we all have different filters through which we describe it, understand it. So let's say for Sean, it was a Christian mystical experience. And for someone else, it could be a yogic experience. And for another person, it will just be like, let's say Sadhguru. If you watch or listen to Sadhguru, he experienced this awakening when he was just sitting in nature, doing nothing. He was, I think, in his early 20s, and I really don't know, I can't remember. He was just sitting in nature, and he was looking at trees. And suddenly, this life force got activated within his body. And when she does that, it is the serpent power of creation. That's why the rainbow serpent is often seen by many and often talked about as, the original creator of planet Earth. And in a way, that's true. As light comes out of source, it comes out in this rainbow frequency, like I said, the 12-dimensional rainbow. And this light moves through different worlds, creating them, because without life force, there is no life. And so in our bodies, in this world, the ultimate state is, that's what awakening really is. When we awaken, and I don't want to say we, because it doesn't happen through force, and it should never happen through force. I don't even think that it should happen through some kind of program where you really want to awaken this life force within you. It's a process that needs to be natural, just like everything in nature needs to be natural. So when you sit in nature and just observe nature, you might attune to this life force in Mother Nature, and you might replicate that within your body, and your body is a tool to do that. The ultimate goal here on planet Earth, and this is something that we're going through right now, we're going through the most miraculous time of all, is for Divine Mother to come back to her fullness in this world. The only way she can do it, and that's what she's trying to do right now. If you start working with her every day, you will get to know her more and more. She started to flow through our nervous system again. And our nervous system is really her pathway through which she flows. So lately, the last few weeks, she has been activating our brain in a way we've not experienced before, and our nervous system, which is mainly, obviously, the spinal cord, so that we can allow her to flow through us, so that we can become the paintbrush again. We have been living in this world in a very distorted way, and that is, obvious, I think, to all of us. And we will be actually returning to harmony and to, again, balance. Now, last year was the most miraculous year that humanity has ever experienced. We received so much help from so many dimensions of existence. And that all happened only because these beings really deeply care for Mother Earth. It might be very strange to us to think that they might not really care so much about us, but we are just one type of species on planet Earth. And from this big perspective, we are really not the most important being on planet Earth. The most important being is Mother Earth herself. And so this is all about returning her body to her balanced state, so that she can be connected again to the magnetic field, which actually not only would be surrounding her as a rainbow body, as protection, as this perfect grid, we can call it the planetary grid of consciousness, but that will reconnect her to the magnetic grid of love of all cosmic creation. So what happened in the past when Divine Mother here on planet Earth had to be disconnected from humans because we had to cut down the amount of life force that we have, that obviously created this kind of distortion, the virus here on planet Earth. And that disconnected the Earth also from the magnetic grid of love in which she used to reside. That's why it seems like we are alone. That's why it seems like, we don't really have a relationship with the galaxy. But again, that's changing right now. So as we are returning to our highest potential, which will be just the beginning, we are really coming from kindergarten, where we played, with the one unit of life force. And we are going to go back to where we were supposed to be and be let's say, like PhD students, you know, who have that doctorate in using life force. That's a big step for us. And we who are already aware, we can start practicing this every day and help others understand how this works. Again, when you start using life force beneficially and in a coherent way, in a responsible way, you will get more and more of it to use. And that's how some beings become master beings, and they can even create their own universe. But in our case, I think just starting with creating a world that we all love would be a really good start. We really are on a beautiful, beautiful planet that has such incredible biology, so rich. And it would be a shame to allow this beautiful planet to suffer because of human unconsciousness and human disconnect from true divinity. Another really important part is, and this is all, I'm just transmitting kind of what she wants to say, and then I'm going to stop and see what she said and ask you. So another important thing she wanted to say is that when human beings stopped understanding life force and creation from this really high perspective, which happened around Atlantis, before Atlantis, they started to look towards other gods. And that creates a big problem. It's like being in kindergarten and then looking at someone in the first grade and saying, wow, that's my God. And especially if the first grader comes, you know, on some chariot from the sky and you are here on planet Earth in your kindergarten. And then you see this first grader being coming down. And of course, we started worshiping them, right? So that really created some problems for us here. And like I said, there are no problems in creation, but it did create problems for us. You can imagine when, let's say, the Anunnaki came and you see all the Greek gods and the Roman gods, they were all describing the Anunnakis. And so they were worshiping these beings just because they came from elsewhere. Now, that again created a disconnect from the true nature of reality. That only threw us deeper into unconsciousness, because how it is in creation, it's very simple. Creation is source experimenting through the field which we call Divine Mother, and within that field you need to have worlds, dimensions, infinite possibilities. But if you behold that simplicity, source has a field and the field creates, then when you know that, that is all you need to worship. And worship is not the right word. I just wanted to bring it up because we were taught to worship, you know, gods, especially in religions. The thing is that we need to move beyond those. And so not only religions, of course, and I think, you know, all of you understand that, but also not putting anything between you and the two elements, and that is source, and that is Divine Mother and her creation. And like I said, she would like to be called life with a capital L. And so when you start understanding how life works, you will no longer give your power to other gods. And I think that's why also our dear Uncle Jesus came to planet Earth to remind humans not to worship multiple gods. You know, it's fun. And I use guides. I have guides that I work with, you know, like Yogananda or whatever guides I work with. But those all should point you towards source. Because once you get to know source, once you get to know Divine Mother in her, you know, cosmic nature as life, then you have all you need to constantly fulfill your purpose. Your purpose is very big. We all have the same big purpose, and that is just one thing: to be enjoying fully the process of creation, to love life fully on that level, you know, to completely stop paying attention to the small life that we have created for ourselves. Because I bet you what we have created here as the small life is not the reflection of our greatest capacity and our greatest potential. Because we all have misused life force, and I'm speaking really for myself, I'm not pointing at you, I'm just going to tell you, I think that we all have misused life force. When we worried, when we had fear, when we held grudges, when we got upset, that all misuses life force. The thing is, as you know, when you are in a hologram reality, which all realities are, then it's kind of silly. Again, speaking to myself really here, it is silly to take life force to resist your own dream. Instead, and this is a step that I received from Divine Mother very clearly, she says, when you look at your life, when you look at the life that is all around you, which is your society, your collective, your entire world, if you see something in your world that you actually would say, I don't like this, then just by stating this, you take life force and you throw it at it. And as you know, whatever you focus on, you empower it. Instead, she says, when you see the world, see it as the dream. It is a dream. And you say, oh, so we created this dream. Surely I can dream something different. And it doesn't mean that you're going to negate what has been created, but you will not even pay attention to it. You know what's good. You know what's really beneficial for all. You know that no matter what, all beings desire the same thing, and that is love, harmony, balance. Deep down, we all have the same divine will, divine desire. Divinity within us is so strong that we know the difference between right and wrong. And so when we see something, let's say, I really deeply care for animals. And where we live, we have so many cows in the pastures that surround us. And so every day we walk and see the cows. And I'm just going to say it from my human perspective. It breaks my heart to think that we live in a world where creatures still suffer because we got used to something so dysfunctional, which is eating animals, exploiting animals. Now, instead of going into that place, it would be much better, and actually that's how creation should work, if I connected with my love for, let's say, cows. And instead of going into feeling bad for them, saying, I love cows so much, I wish them the greatest, safest life where they thrive, they are loved. And you know where I'm going with this. You create the new reality without negating the other reality. So that is the most important thing about the world we live in right now.